So this was the 178th Diocesan Convention, and the theme this year was Lord, make us instruments of his peace. So this was held at the end of January, and not only was it on Zoom, so we all sat in our homes, but we also had electronic voting. And we'd tried that once or twice when we were on site in the past, and it didn't work too well for everybody, but this time it seemed to be quite successful. So the secretary of the convention was Reverend Lance Horn, and the nominations committee was headed by the Reverend Canon Wiley Ammons, and the credentials committee was headed by Reverend Bob Yerkes. Reverend Nancy Suellau presented Robert's Rules, and that was voted and adopted. And Reverend Bob Yerkes of the Credentials Committee presented the organization of the meeting and committee credentials, and that was voted and passed. So my main focus from Norma and I kind of divvy up the information. So I am going to just tell you a little bit about Bishop Howard's address. And he mainly focused on the effects of the coronavirus and the pandemic on the population, on social unrest and political upheaval. And thirdly, he talked about the work of the diocese. And he stated that there was no pause in the work of the diocese during this last year, despite the pandemic and possibly at some personal cost and risk, but the work of God must continue, he said. The challenge was met by developing live streaming or recorded church services. As you all know, you've probably watched a few of ours. His goals were to stay in touch as a unifying force for the diocese, be available to the clergy, and to continue visitation to the churches, mostly via Zoom. So he attended more than 100 Zoom meetings with various groups over that period. He had 7 ordination services. They were live, but they were kept small. He made 40 recorded addresses in the form of Faithful Fridays that were intended to be supportive to the diocese. And the challenge was met by the churches and congregations supporting God's work as best we could. Going forward, we will incorporate the positive things that we've learned during the pandemic. Referring to the pandemic, he stated how it exposed the brokenness of people and referenced the Beatitudes and how they apply today to our situation as we deal with sickness, fear, deprivation, and mourning among the population, among other things. He stressed that God gives us hope. Hope is a victory. We're blessed when we are where God wants us to be. That is, living and working in the face of disease. We'll always be needy, and we must rely on the grace of God, he said. The future will be ruled by God's hope and peace. Lastly, Bishop Howard announced that he will retire in 2023 as required by the canons of the church. He'll be 72 at that time. A search committee will be instated and begin the nationwide search with a walkabout on June 3rd and 4th, with the investiture planned for June 24th of 2022. So, in other words, the search will go on through the next year or so, over a year. Then, once the candidate has been accepted and invested, beginning in November 2022, the new bishop will serve as a coadjutor with Bishop Howard for 1 year. So they'll be working together for that year. Reverend Remington Stone of the Standing Committee will initiate the process for the election of a new bishop coadjutor, and the vote passed for proceeding with the selection process. He closed his remarks saying that he yearned for normalcy, he yearned to hear live choirs, have in-person services and baptisms, etc., and is hoping for an in-person convention next time. He asked us to be kind, be joyful, give thanks, avoid evil, and be peaceful. Now, if you're interested in hearing his address, it's on the diocesan website, so that would be interesting for you to listen to his entire address, I think. So also 7 newly ordained clergy were introduced during this session, and that closes my portion, and I'll hand it off to Norma.
And I'm going to pick up with the committee reports. Starting with the Bishops' Institute, Douglas Dupree spoke on behalf of the Bishops' Institute, and he shared several things with us. He said that they will continue to move forward with one of the 2 ongoing programs that are year-long, and one of the programs was Deacon's School, and it will continue through 2021. They will be doing a new program in 2021, and it's on lay ministry and pastoral care. They're also going to do some additional lay leadership programs that will be offered this year. He addressed the newsletter and wanted to make sure that everyone was getting the bishop's newsletter. So I think if you know of anyone that's not getting it, Kitty, I think you probably can help them with that, can't you? The next thing was Camp Weed. Thomas Frazier, he is the director, and he gave an update. He said that the camp is in wonderful condition, and they are so ready for everyone to come back. Samantha Markson, she's director of summer camp and youth activities. She said there will be a summer camp this year, and that the registration will be open to the families first and then to the public. For additional information, also they asked for volunteers. For additional information, go to campweed.org. Swanee, the University of the South, we saw a beautiful movie. I mean, that campus is absolutely gorgeous. And for those of you that don't know, it's a private Episcopal liberal arts college in Swanee, Tennessee, owned by 28 Southern Dioceses of the Episcopal Church, is a school of theology and official seminary of the South. I finally decided I'm going to take that off. The movie is narrated by Reuben Brigerty. He is the very first African American to serve as Vice Chancellor and President of Swanee since its inception. You do not have to be Episcopalian to attend there. As a matter of fact, he mentioned on the movie that he is Presbyterian. The Episcopal Diocese, the Florida Foundation, a report was done by John Baker. He is the chairperson. And the purpose of the foundation is to support the diocese mission and visions. And the single largest program that they support is Camp Weed and Servity. And due to COVID, Camp Weed was dramatically hurt this year because it was closed down. There was no money that they were able to make. The foundation budgeted $714,000, but they came back and was asked to donate an additional $300,000. But they said the foundation still remains in very good condition, very healthy, $2.7 million in the 2 budgets they have. The 2021 expenses, they do anticipate those being less because they did lose their director, and Doug Walker, and he has not been replaced. And I don't think they're planning on replacing him. I mean, they're doing a search, but they're not rushing. The treasurer's report, Common Ministry was presented by the Honorable Donald Lester. He is the new treasurer. And he said the budget was overestimated last year by $65,000. Expenses were down due to COVID. There was decrease in travel, decrease in staff. They also had staff reduction and a decrease in administrative cost. Everybody, I think, was working out of their home for a while, so it really helped there. They did receive $59,000 in PPP money, and that was shared with the churches who did not personally apply themselves. And we were very blessed to receive some of that money. The budget was presented by Reverend Matt Marino, and he is the budget chairman. And he said the budget for last year and expenses were very realistic for 2020, and that there was a $3,294 change in net assets. We saw one more additional movie. It was on Episcopal Relief and Development, ERD, which we participate in. And they are involved nationally and internationally. I had no idea they serve 3 million people every year to prevent poverty and change. Then they're mainly address women, children, and climate. They are built on 4 core values: faith, dignity, relationship, leadership, and excellence. Next was the nomination and election, and that was done by Reverend Canon Wiley Ammon, and he did present everyone that was running, and then they voted on it by email, and then all those results, the results for the nominations and elections for the movie, for both of the movies, you can find on go-to-convention.dioceseflorida.org. And the Bishop Howard dismissed the annual committee convention, and the meeting was adjourned by Chancellor Fred C. Isaac at 12:21 p.m.
Thank you very much, ladies. Going to a convention is not everyone's cup of tea. Clergy are required, so I do attend. The theme of the convention was based on the song. One of the songs that's in our prayer book is called The Prayer of St. Francis. And the theme was, make me a channel of your peace. And I thought that was a good theme. That's one of my favorite songs. Norma had mentioned about the PPE program. Last year, Congress passed the CARES Act. And in that act, there was a provision that money would be given to small businesses to help them during the pandemic. But the businesses had to apply themselves. And there was talk because a lot of small businesses did not have the help that they needed. They didn't have attorneys, or some of them did not even have contact with banks that knew them. And so, but we were blessed in this diocese. I don't know who did it, but someone from the bishop's office applied for money from that act. And the Diocese of Florida did receive that money. And the money was distributed to small churches. And I know we have a lot of small churches, and so a lot of churches benefited, and we were one. And what they did was they looked at our payroll, and they gave us money to pay people. It's payroll protection. That's the name of the act. And it was money given so that we could keep people on our payroll. Currently, we only have 3 people on our payroll, and that's who they looked at. We pay Robert as needed, which is all the time, but he's not on the payroll. Yeah. So we were given money on April 30th and May 31st. That was a huge help for us because that was the height of the pandemic. And in the budget for this time, they put that PPE money in there. But whether or not we will get it will depend on whether or not Congress passes the bill again. And the bill is going up, I think, any day now. They want to get it done by March 14th. So we'll see if we get any of that money. And it was so smooth that it was done through our bank. We didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to lift a finger to get that money. So I called the bishop personally and thanked him, and I sent him an email, and I thanked his canon for thinking of us. That was really good. Now, last year, we started out the year as normal. We may have heard about the COVID or whatever that virus was, but it was not affecting us. It was overseas. And then suddenly in mid-March, a pandemic was announced. And then in mid-March, we were told to shut down as much as we could, with special emphasis on gatherings, large gatherings of people where there's singing. So that's church. So we closed the church. Our last service was March 15th. And then on that day, I didn't know what we were going to do. And then Robert came up to me and said, we could record the service. And I'm like, okay, show me how. And he showed me his camera, this little camera here. As a matter of fact, I forgot to tell y'all, this service is being recorded. So it's so surprised it will be passed out. And I was like, that little camera? And that's the case. The camera inside is even smaller. But I'm glad Robert came forward because we have not missed a service. We have had either one or both. We started our first recording on March 22nd, and we had to learn how to do it, what to do. But now we can record it much faster. It used to take a little more than 2 hours to do it. Now we can do it much faster. And on that, in the recorded service, we have Robert and then Don and Catherine Carlson. Don leads the service. He's last year graduated from the school as a lay leader, but because of COVID, he's not able to come to larger gatherings. And then Catherine comes as a lector, and when she doesn't come, then Heidi is a lector. And then when neither one of them comes, then Robert is a lector. Sometimes there are only 2 of us, but most times there are 4 or 5 of us at the recordings. We did those recordings until June, when we were told we could open up the church. So I opened up the church in June. We had all these restrictions, as you can see now. And then the canon told us to shut down because there were more cases of the virus in our side of town than in the whole diocese. So our zip codes had a high incidence of the virus. So we opened for 1 month in June and stayed closed all of the summer months. We did not open again until October 1st, of the first Sunday in October. While we were closed, we still had the recorded services. When we opened in October, we had both in-person and recorded services. Last year, just prior to the pandemic, I think I was on a high, we had a joint Ash Wednesday service with St. Andrew's, St. Matthew's, and us. And it was a rainy, stormy night, but we had 83 people in attendance. And it was supposed to be a somber service, but it was real joyful and we had fun. We didn't know what was coming up ahead of us. We started the Lenten services with soup and salad down in the parish hall, but we could only do 2 in-person services. We were not doing Zoom then, so we just stopped. One thing we learned was we had soup and salad. One group bought soup and salad, our group bought soup and salad, and our group ate our soup and salad, and their group ate their soup and salad. So Pastor Ellen and I said, let's change this. 1 week, your group will do it. Next week, my group will do it. Because the idea was to get us to merge together. So as the year went on, we did have the Palm Sunday service, but we didn't even go outside and wave the palms. We had the play that we usually do, and we were standing across the altar, and the recording got us in. And then we had the Easter service, and it was just heartbreaking for me not to have an in-person Easter service. I mean, that's our patronal day when we make noise and we could say that A word that we had been burying all for 6 weeks. The bishop told me, and he told all the other clergy, that he wants us to have an in-person Resurrection Day service this year, regardless of how many people show up. So I told him that we have continued to have the service. And by the way, he has been quite sick. And I had him on the prayer list, and he told me to take him off. And then he told me not to put him on again, but lift him up in your prayers. He did not disclose what his problem was. He just said it's not COVID. Even though we did not have an Easter service, we had 194 views on Zoom to see that service. So it probably was 200 people because some households viewed the service. So what Zoom has shown me is that we're reaching out to more people. Catherine, Don's wife, sends out a list where you can go back and reach and get other services. If you are not getting that list, because she sends it every weekend, she sends a notice that the Zoom service is ready. And you can click and go back and look at the ones you may have missed. And with me looking back, because I had to do a report, our numbers were much higher than I ever thought they would be. And then I got nervous. Oh my goodness, people are going to be looking at us do this. I had a Zoom a Zoom study, Bible study on the Philippians in July. And we had planned a joint Christmas Eve service with St. Matthew's outside, and then all the days before leading up to it were nice, but the report was a severe storm on Christmas Eve. So that service was canceled. During the end of December, we received 2 large donations that really helped us to end the year in good stead. And these were very large. One person gave us $1,000 and another person gave us $4,800. So with that $5,800, we were able to end the year in good stead with good money in the bank. We did not have any baptisms, confirmations, and no bishop visits, and he's longing to get out to the churches. Normally, he would come to see us in even years. If you remember, we had a family that sat in the back there, the Ariano family, and people have asked me, well, what happened to them? They were a military family, and they had been assigned here. And Mrs. Ariano said that they thought this would be it. This would be their home. But during the pandemic, he got notice that he was being reassigned to a base in Virginia. So during the pandemic, they moved to Virginia. Also, during the pandemic, because of illness, Cindy Wall's family told her to move and be closer to them. So she moved up in Georgia to be closer to her daughters. Also, Bernie, who used to sit back there, moved to Riverside. And his mother called me and told me that she's in her 90s and she can no longer care for him. So she found an assisted living facility for him. During this time, also, Sylvia was placed in a facility, and so was Justina. The money that we got from the diocese was about $4,700, which was a big help, a huge help to us. We are continuing this year, like we were last year, with the in-person and the recorded service. And we're doing everything possible to make this environment as sterile as possible. If any of you all are wondering if I had the vaccine, yes, I have had the first one. I get the second one Wednesday, March 3rd. The reason why I was late getting it, and I regretted that, was I had major surgery in January, and the doctor told me I needed to wait to get the vaccine. And I was disappointed because I'm a patient at Mayo Clinic, and they offered me a slot, and I couldn't take it. But I did get on their list, and I got on by 3 other lists, and I got a call from Regency. So that's where I went, and that was a well-oiled machine. We had our first Lenten study on the places in the Passion, the final days of Jesus, and the first study was on Jerusalem. Only a few of you all attended. Robert sent the information out with a link where you could click on, and it was real simple. All you had to do, like we do at the DOK meeting, just click on the link. So I hope some of you all join us Wednesday coming up for the second Lenten study. I did the first one, and Pastor Ellen and I switched because she got her second shot last Wednesday. And so I did the study, and I'm going to get mine this Wednesday, and she's going to do the study this Wednesday. So we keep it on time. It's no more than an hour and a half, but time does go by fast. Now, at the parish meeting, this is the time where we vote on and select delegates to the convention. Now, in the past, and I've told people, I wanted to be upfront with you, in normal times, you have to pay the money up front, which will be around November or December. Normally, it's around $175 or more. And then you don't get the money back until after the convention, which would be in February. And so I put that out there so people won't be surprised. The church does help you, but not until after the convention. We currently have 2 delegates, and because of our church size, that's what we are allotted for the convention. This year and next year, the delegates will take part in a very important process, and that's the election of a bishop coadjutor. Because we're going to have a coadjutor, that's a gift to the diocese, because that person will be with the bishop in training, so to speak, for 1 year. It's a very unique and elaborate process, and the voting is very unique. It's all done in the cathedral, and they said that's where it will be done this time. And we keep voting. We are separated, clergy and lay. And we keep voting till we come up with the one person who's going to be the bishop coadjutor. And like I tell people from this diocese, women can be bishop. A lot of dioceses have female bishops. We have never had one. I'm not promoting one, but don't be surprised if a good candidate comes up and that candidate is a female. And as soon as the bishop coadjutor is elected, then that person will more than likely come around and visit as many churches as possible in that year's time, because that person will become bishop. And the delegates that we select will get an opportunity to participate in that and to go to the consecration of that bishop, which is something that doesn't happen often. So I'm opening the floor to see if, to accept any nominations for people. We have Bronwyn Chandler and Norma Dorset, and they said that they would continue through this process of electing a coadjutor. We also need an alternate. Do I hear any nominations? You don't have to, because they said they would continue, you could volunteer if you like. So are there any nominations? Okay, I'll let the record show that our delegates will continue to be Bronwyn and Norma. Anyone interested in being an alternate? Going once? Oh, okay. Well, if you think about becoming an alternate, let me know. That's still a very important role in this process. And if you are a delegate, you will need to pay attention, take notes like they did, and come back and tell everybody what happened. And thank you so much, ladies, for a thorough report. Are there any questions that you have? Oh, and one other thing. I received $4,500 in donations, probably more, from a couple of members and from someone who does not belong to the church. And I was told to help people that needed help during this pandemic. And I was able to give out close to that $4,500. I think only a few dollars are left. I help people pay rent and buy food and pay mortgage. So it was the delight of my life to be able to do that, because normally I don't have a chance to do it. And the money was placed in a special fund called the Rector's Discretionary. So when I helped people, that money did not hurt or come from the church's money, so it did not have to be repaid. And I gave first preference to members, and members didn't have to produce receipts or go through all that documentation. But if someone from the outside contacted me, I needed documentation. Thank you. I mentioned Robert as soon as I got here. We would not be able to have all these things done without him. And he just recorded that song. And so the name of it was Thank You, Never Alone. And he had the opportunity to share that song with you. And I think it's wonderful during Lent, because we are never alone. So thank you for recognizing Robert. Now, our budget for this year is a little bit more than it was last year, because we're paying Robert more this year than we did last year and the years before. Because of the studies, he's coordinating those and recording those. So we pay him for any of the activities that he does for the church. Yeah, it's not, I mean, we wouldn't ask you to do all that he does without paying him. And by the way, we have Kathy, who cleans St. Matthew's, and we pay her for doing that. And that also has been placed in the budget, so the budget is a little bit more. We paid the diocese $900 plus $1,000 last year. That was our requirement to pay the diocese. So since we have this increase, next year we'll probably be paying them $10,000. Each church pays 10% of their budget to the diocese. So money flows up, not down. The exception was the payroll protection money that we got. Okay, any other questions or comments or concerns? Okay, and Sylvanita did the reading today. So if there's one thing people don't want to do is read. And she came to us from Clinton, Maryland, which was not far from my church in seminary, Christ Church. And her priest, female priest, was one of my friends in seminary. So when she came, she told me that she had been a lector in her church. And so I told her to get with Barbara and Kitty so we can add her to the list of lectors. So I know it's scary when you first start, but pretty soon you won't be scared. You'll be in there. Okay, anything else? So let's stand and reaffirm our faith by saying the Nicene Creed.